Hello and welcome to today's webinar. A successful hybrid cloud strategy starts with data center modernization. This event is presented in partnership with Nutanix and produced by Actual Tech Media. Thanks so much for joining us on the webinar today. We've got a great presentation lined up for you, and we'll be taking your questions live. So with that, there's a few things that you should know before we get started. First off, my name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator. As always with our events here at Actual Tech Media, we want these to be educational. We're all former IT professionals ourselves, and we know how tough it can be in the world of enterprise IT. So we encourage your questions there on the questions pane. I've noticed many of you have already said hello and good morning from across the United States and around the world, and we appreciate that, but we also want your technical questions. In fact, we have our best question prize to help encourage that, if you will. And I'll talk about that here in just a moment. I also want to call your attention to the handouts tab. It's there that you can, it's there that you'll find a link to the Nutanix test drive. That's where you can try out the Nutanix solution that you'll learn about on the event today for free in your web browser. It's a great way to learn about the power of the Nutanix solution for yourself. There's also 4 different PDF resources that you can download there now, and I encourage you to do that because those resources won't be as readily available after the webinar. So just click on those. They'll download to your local computer, or they'll open a new tab or a window in your web browser. So make sure that you check those out before the event ends. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, I'll be announcing the winner of our Visa $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found there in the handouts tab as well. And then I mentioned we have our best question prize. We started this recently as a way to help encourage folks to ask questions. If you have a question that's on your mind and you're thinking, well, I'm not really sure if I should ask that, go ahead and ask away, and you'll be entered into a drawing for a Visa $50 gift card. Prize winners for that will be contacted via email after the event, and you still must meet the Actual Tech Media prize policy. So with that out of the way, it's time to kick off today's webinar. I'm excited now to introduce you to our expert presenter. Welcome, Mr. Steve Carter, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Nutanix. Steve, it's great to have you on.
Thanks, David. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, take it away. Tell us about how to successfully modernize our data center.
All right, sounds good. So yeah, I'm going to talk about modernizing your data center to optimize for the hybrid cloud. So let's get into it. So every organization is struggling, with a couple of kind of key objectives with IT, right? Rapidly innovating to grow revenue, while at the same time delighting customers so that you can retain and continue to grow your customer base and advocate for them. But also keeping costs efficient and not letting those get out of hand. So cloud is really emerged as the enabler of this digital future. But there's more to it than just that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So some of the top challenges that we all face is complex, manually managed siloed infrastructure. It makes it difficult to quickly provision and deploy apps. And then it's an ongoing struggle to keep apps and data secure and compliant. At the same time, when we're talking about the cloud, trying to navigate the cloud and on-premise landscape, kind of what goes where, how to unify them, how to keep the on-prem infrastructure, to kind of keep pace with the cloud while keeping cloud costs from blowing up is a challenge. And then, unpredictable operations leads to, excess cost and or downtime or both. And continuing to try to innovate and grow while trying to optimize for cost are all really common challenges in the market. So cloud deployments can get pretty complex, and this is a perfect example of the complexity and silos that happen by trying to set up a hybrid cloud. The challenges can add up fast, such as data locality, keeping the data close to apps that need low latency. Workload and license portability, identity management, consistent security controls across the different deployment models, And as you've probably experienced, this complexity gets problematic fast. What we're going to talk today is how to, effectively use the cloud to have a positive impact on your business. And so, by getting the most out of your cloud investment, it really depends on effective integration with the existing IT initiatives, right? So you can't just, shut everything down and move everything to the cloud, maybe in a perfect world, but how do you keep things running and keep, your existing processes moving forward while you're adopting these new technologies? So, in addition to determining how you're going to use the public cloud resources, it's important to think about how your existing IT environment can fit in. So the first step of a successful cloud journey is to implement a streamlined private cloud. Let's see here. So, HCI abstracts your applications and data from the underlying hardware, both in your own data center and in the public cloud. And this not only simplifies cloud adoption, but also makes it easy to move applications between the two. And then by unifying your infrastructure, you enable unified infrastructure management, not only across your public and private clouds, but across different public clouds as well. And so this makes it easy to deploy your applications where it makes the most sense for your business, both from an efficiency and an agility perspective. So I think we have a poll now. David, do you want to?
Absolutely, yeah.
Run through this?
Yeah, we've just brought up a poll on the screen for everyone out there in the audience. I want to call your attention to this. The question on the screen says, how would you describe your organization's current hybrid cloud organization structure? And so do you have it broken up into separate teams to manage your legacy IT environment versus cloud-based services? Do you have a single team that manages all the infrastructure, both on-prem and in the cloud? Or is most of your infrastructure still on-prem, but you're investigating cloud-based services? So it really breaks down to separate teams, a single team for on-prem and the cloud, or really everything's on-prem and you're looking into the cloud. So I'll give everyone a moment to respond to that, and then we will share the results and you can see how you stack up with your peers on the webinar today.
All right, so it's looking like most organizations on the call have definitely adopted cloud in a meaningful way, although still a pretty sizable percentage, I suppose, are still investigating moving to the cloud. I think the middle group, the single team managing all your infrastructure. And that's, I think, the kind of panacea. If you can unify and not have these silos, like that's the ideal place to be. So it looks like a good percentage of the attendees are kind of in that position already, which is really great to see. And so I think we're going to talk about how to make that, I think, even easier for that unified team.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anything else to add, David?
No, I think it looks like a good breakdown, like you said, across all three really categories there, but I'm sure that Nutanix could help to really unify this into a single management team. I think that makes the most sense for everyone in the organization and for the business as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't surprise me to see that the majority, at least that responded to the poll, still I do have separate teams for the legacy IT environment and the cloud-based services. That's kind of what I typically seen talking to customers. So, all right, let's move on with the presentation, talk about how to more effectively, I think, unify. All right, so the first step, as we mentioned, is infrastructure modernization. And so, what most traditional IT infrastructure looks like is something like this, right? You have separate storage and then storage networking and servers, typically virtualized, but of course, with often still a lot of bare metal as well. And then you layer in the Kubernetes and containerized workloads and adds another layer. This requires negotiating with multiple vendors, a careful selection, integration of technologies, and then once deployed, it needs to be managed by specialized teams that focus on managing each of these silos of infrastructure. And so often then, even within the on-prem sort of realm, there's often some silos that exist there already as well. So then as it always does, when things go wrong, you often find these multiple teams in war rooms where they look to their individual sets of tools to troubleshoot what went wrong, and that often leads to then finger pointing instead of collaborative and expedited problem resolution. And then, to rub salt into the wound, routine upgrades are time-consuming, require immense attention to detail, can be disruptive to business operations, which is why they're often performed during the weekends. And then before you know it, it's time for a refresh. And this can be exhausting. So this really keeps us spending a disproportionate amount of time on tending to infrastructure. So let's see. So because the infrastructure is complex and keeps us focused on kind of the speeds and feeds, it's no wonder that according to a Nutanix survey, we found that 50% of developers circumvent instead of collaborate with IT. And that's what we're hoping to help alleviate. So some of the challenges, it necessitates long-term capacity planning and forecasting, which takes a lot of time and slows things down, prevents rapid application provisioning, and then requires forklift upgrades and refresh. And so it makes it really tough to respond quickly to changing business needs. So meanwhile, on the cloud, distributed computing has matured, right? So on the storage side, it's replicated for protection, self-heals to maintain integrity, so it can heal extremely quickly and efficiently. And storage is addressed as a logical volume instead of being tied to the underlying disk groups or controllers. And then at the same time, compute is distributed, of course, as well. Typically deployed VMs or containers. The hardware is abstracted away, and the compute is then treated as a logical resource. All right, so HCI brings cloud tech to your data center. So basically, what you end up with is instead of needing to deploy these large inflexible storage arrays, HCI enables dynamic data centers that can adjust flexibly to changing business needs. And so the result is increased productivity and efficiency. And so instead of needing to spend most of your effort maintaining infrastructure with only a fraction of the time left for applications and services, HCI enables you to flip that equation. So now you're spending most of your time working on innovation and supporting customers instead of keeping the lights on. So businesses place heavy demands on IT, and HCI gives you the ability to really focus on the customers. So what you need when you need it. When most one of the most important financial advantages of hyper-converged infrastructure is its ability to scale dynamically with changing business needs. So rather than investing the time of valuable IT resources and extended planning cycles, you only need to plan for the next few quarters where your visibility to what's needed is much clearer. Then you can also minimize opportunity costs by investing in infrastructure over time instead of making large upfront investments that aren't fully utilized until after the original purchase. And critically, HCI gives you the ability to more easily change course as business needs change. So you can adjust your investment in new infrastructure as IT service growth accelerates or decelerates. So this is then the foundation for your private cloud. And all these capabilities are delivered by the Nutanix private cloud solution. So you can basically deploy application services and data at scale with intelligent automation, self-service capabilities, and that brings the cloud simplicity and agility to enterprise data centers. And so this unique Nutanix approach allows unparalleled choice of hardware and hypervisors, gives you license portability, all while reducing TCO and preventing expensive vendor lock-in. All right, so let's talk about the second step, which is streamlining and automating IT operations. So innovation is a key component of driving business growth, and it depends on people dedicating time and energy to the innovation projects. The more time your team needs to spend provisioning, monitoring, troubleshooting, and so on, the less time is available to invest in these new processes and initiatives that can drive growth. So the streamlined nature of HCI makes it possible to easily automate many of these processes that have traditionally required manual intervention. And with Nutanix HCI, codeless automation is built in and can be deployed and configured in minutes. So without the need for complex setup or integration, you can immediately benefit from automatic capacity forecasting, proactive VM right-sizing, and automation geared for specific applications. And this makes it even easier to optimize your environment, to minimize costs and optimize performance, and without adding additional work for your team. It doesn't need to be integrated with other technologies within your data center. It just works right out of the box. And then management is unified to a single pane of glass. And so this makes it easy to manage all of your clusters from one place. You can deploy from a single location as well without needing to fly people around the world to deploy if you have multiple data centers or remote sites. And then you can drive cost governance too with predictive capacity management, even across clouds, to help point out what your, where your efficiencies can be gained. Now that we've begun to simplify and automate the infrastructure management, you can begin to focus on the most critical services requested by your users, and that can be done by taking stock of your most. So basically, self-service is what I'm trying to get at here. You can enable your users to provision their own applications instead of needing to file tickets that have to then cycle through multiple teams that can deploy or delay application deployment. And that's what leads to developers wanting to go to the cloud, or to business partners wanting to go to software as a service as opposed to anything being run on-prem. So the other thing is preventing downtime to maximize revenue. This is an example of a customer, Seattle Children's Hospital, that you could see was having some problems with downtime, and they estimated that it was about $7,700 a minute of lost revenue when they had outages, which was adding up massively. You can see 2016 was almost $30 million. When they switched to HCI, the number of unplanned outages dropped dramatically, and this saved a huge amount of money for them. And we've seen this across a lot of HCI adopters. And so just as a kind of highlight for the benefits financially of adopting this platform is 62% lower TCO over 5 years, greatly reduced downtime, large ROI that pays back in 9 months, and on average, almost $1 million of additional revenue per year. Okay, so now let's talk about integrating the public cloud. So basically, all of the software stack that runs in your private cloud can also be extended to the public cloud. And so this way, you end up with a unified infrastructure that is managed all through the same single pane of glass, and that you can easily then move applications back and forth between the clouds depending on cost factors and what's available in your data center at the moment, so you can respond very quickly to changing business needs as well. So the way that this works is with Nutanix Clusters. And so Nutanix Clusters basically is what enables you to quickly, with basically a single click, deploy, your Nutanix HCI software across multiple public clouds. You can use your existing Nutanix software and licenses, or you can buy licenses that, like per hour, per sort of amount of time needed. And then you can still use your own AWS accounts and credits, networking, and so you're in complete control. And you can still then hook into existing AWS services as well. You can migrate without any retooling or refactoring, and the same predictable Nutanix AOS resilience and efficiency. If you just move VMs to the cloud, you're not guaranteed any sort of data protection out of the box unless you retool them to a certain extent. And Nutanix makes it very seamless without having to worry about any retooling on the application side. And then also native integration with cloud networking. So there's no networking overlay complexity, and it's really easy to deploy and easy to manage. All right. So the most common use cases that we see adopting a hybrid cloud today, the first one is disaster recovery. So without needing to invest in a second data center, you can replicate and recover into the public cloud. And you can do this extremely quickly and easily, and it makes it easy to protect your business without needing to stand up data centers in completely different regions and so on. On-demand elasticity is another important use case, so that if you need new resources quickly, you can rapidly burst into the public cloud and to react to seasonal demand or for a quick ramp for a new project. And then also lift and shift. So if you want to move the applications to the cloud for a number of reasons, you can do this very easily just by migrating your applications up there, and then you're good to go. So the benefits are seamless app mobility, unified infrastructure management, and improved cost effectiveness. So a little bit about app mobility. You can accelerate workload migration without refactoring, as I mentioned. You can also modernize legacy apps with native access to AWS resources. So once you migrate them up, as I mentioned, you can plug into the existing AWS services without needing to run those like in parallel with your cloud deployment and a different AZ or something of that nature. You can reuse your existing networking setup and your security groups, and then minimize downtime with near zero outage and full cutover control for when you're doing this migration up to the cloud. All right, so I think we have another poll coming up. David?
Absolutely, yeah. The poll on the screen I want to call everyone's attention to is, what is driving your organization's interest in public cloud? And the answers here are increasing our ability to respond to the changing business needs, that kind of business agility need that so many companies have. Of course, saving money. We're all looking to save money. Perhaps our ability to adjust to seasonal demand fluctuations, that business scalability use case. And then perhaps, final question or final response there, we don't really have an active interest in utilizing public cloud resources at this time. But, if you're on this event, it's likely that you're wanting to learn more. So I'll give everyone a moment to respond to this one. And keep in mind, this is a single select answer here. So pick your best answer, your most driving interest in public cloud. And I'll share the results here. Looks like most of you have responded. Just a few more seconds. All right, and the results are in. It says that 48% of you said that you are looking to increase your ability to respond to the changing business needs. That's good to see. Of course, 32% also interested in saving money for your IT organization and the company as well. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it aligns with what I would expect. Typically, number one is one of the key reasons you see a lot of organizations moving to the cloud, but saving money is always important. So, and I think those two are kind of the most common business drivers for businesses in general. So, yeah, this definitely reflects what I would expect. Yeah, let's get in a little bit more around how unifying clouds can help you respond quickly. Let's see here. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is cloud native applications, as it ties into this whole conversation, right? Because there is often a different architecture for applications that are built for the cloud specifically, and that's a really key component for a modern IT infrastructure as you move forward. Enterprise applications in the hybrid cloud era, why run in the public cloud first off, right? So cost efficiency is one reason. You can do Opex expenditure rather than the big upfront Capex expenditure. Easy use, so the complexity around Kubernetes and the infrastructure itself is abstracted away when you use the Kubernetes services that are available in public clouds. And then it's feature rich. So there's a broad developer toolkit that makes it really easy for developers to provision new apps and services in the cloud. But there's reasons to run on-prem too, even for these these cloud native applications. So for one is compliance. Many organizations are subject to regulation around data locality. So in other words, especially a lot of organizations in smaller countries outside of the U.S. need to keep data in country and so on, and that can complicate cloud deployments, as an example. Improved data center efficiency, so modernizing and getting more out of existing infrastructure investment, and often we find that companies that are efficiently running their own data centers can actually result in having a lower expenditure than companies that use the cloud. But there's obviously it depends a lot on how you're doing one or the other on that front. And then performance. So certain workloads might require, really high IOPS and ultra low latency, with the built-in data protection that enterprise solutions provide. And so that's another reason why many companies choose to remain on-prem or keep some applications on-prem. And then apps need to run at the edge in a lot of cases, right? Retail, manufacturing, warehouses, oil rigs, and so on. There's a ton of examples of this. So there's some challenges with going cloud native as well, right? So, Kubernetes is deep and complex. If anybody, on the call has taken a stab at really mastering it, there's a lot to learn, a lot to master, and it evolves fast, right? A huge ecosystem, and so many organizations don't have the in-house expertise and can't keep pace with developers' needs. Legacy infrastructure isn't built for Kubernetes. It's another big challenge. It's a distributed system, right? It requires compute, storage, and networking that adapts to the way it operates. And so trying to run, a Kubernetes infrastructure with kind of a traditional SAN-based architecture, leads to some pretty big challenges. So you end up having a lot of times when companies run it on-prem, like another silo for the Kubernetes, which is, big sort of bare metal cluster that is kind of another whole thing to manage. And then it's difficult to optimize multi-cloud usage, right? Without the right tools, cost and management burden can really skyrocket. So Carbon Clusters is a Nutanix service that enables basically like a one-click turnkey provisioning operations and lifecycle management of Kubernetes. So it's a lot like the Kubernetes services up in the public clouds, but this is in your own private cloud. And so less than 20 minutes to deploy production-ready Kubernetes clusters, public cloud-like operations, but on premises, automated scaling and upgrades, and then expert technical support, right? Call Nutanix support, and support for the whole stack. It seamlessly integrates with all the Kubernetes services, integrated CSI drivers, so you can have persistent block and file and object storage as well, for your cloud-native applications. And it's no lock-in, so it is native Kubernetes with all the standard APIs. And a lot of organizations have invested in a Kubernetes stack already, and so Nutanix HCI integrates with existing Kubernetes frameworks as well. So it's not you have flexibility just like you do with hypervisors. Best infrastructure for Kubernetes because it's really architected for Kubernetes and distributed environments. Integrates storage, automation, and a whole lot more. Supports VMs and containers in the same environment. So, for example, if you haven't containerized your databases, you could just run those in VMs without needing to have a whole separate architecture to support the databases within that environment. And then integrates with key public cloud platforms, right? So this, again, makes it easy to move back and forth as needed. It also, as I mentioned, deploys quickly. It offers, intuitive public cloud-like experience, full stack support, from a single leading infrastructure vendor, and it accelerates app development, so easily meets the developers' needs for IT resources. And so, a lot of organizations look kind of like this. You often have a bunch of different services and applications that you're delivering to your users. So business critical applications are going to have their own infrastructure. Often VDI then will have its own infrastructure as well, because you don't want the boot storms and things of that nature to take down a database or disrupt some user experience. Remote office or branch office then will have often a different solution. You don't need a full SAN stack out at every remote office. Again, cloud native, deployed to a cloud. And then your big data environment often deployed to then a separate kind of big bare metal server farm. And then finally, you might have some additional high performance databases that'll be deployed on then another SAN stack, right? So maybe a high performance all flash SAN stack, maybe moving into NVMe over fabrics or so on and so forth. And so you end up with all these different silos that can be, really complex. And you end up with, stranded resources as well that can't be shared amongst all these different use cases. So with the HCI, you end up with this unified platform that shares these all under the same umbrella and is optimized for each one of them. And this makes it a lot easier to both remain efficient and really accelerate your business operations at the same time as maximizing cost efficiency. So with that said, I'd like to invite you to take a test drive of the Nutanix software. So just go to nutanix.com/test drive, and you'll be able to, with a couple clicks, get your own dedicated cluster spun up in the cloud. You can log in and play around with all of the different Nutanix services and offerings in order to see how it would look in your own environment. So I think that's it for me today. Thank you so much for attending. David, back to you.
Great presentation, Steve. Really, really cool stuff you guys are doing there at Nutanix. We do have some questions for you now. Again, I want to encourage everyone to check out the handouts tab. It's there that you'll find the Nutanix test drive link right at the top, as well as a number of other resources. In fact, there is the full next generation hyper-converged infrastructure ebook for dummies right there. The full dummies book, if you want to download that and check it out after the event. I encourage you to review the handouts. So thank you everyone for your questions. If you have a question, now's the time to get it in. Let's see, first question that came in, Steve, they're asking about how does Nutanix licensing work between running on-prem versus running in the cloud? What would they need to know, if anything, about moving applications that are leveraging Nutanix from on-prem to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the licensing is flexible. So you buy basically a per CPU license on the Nutanix HCI side, and then that can be applied to your cloud instances as well. So if you have a pool of licenses, you can choose then, depending on kind of when you're deploying your services, where those are applied. We also have an option for just-in-time licenses in the cloud. So if you only need services for a certain amount of time, or you want to pay kind of on a per hour, per daily basis, you can do that as well. And so we give you the flexibility to either kind of utilize what you have already, or use a more cloud-like licensing model when that makes sense.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's great, especially for that use case. We talked about how so many companies need, scalable infrastructure to burst up. They need that elasticity, for their business at certain times of the year. So that would be great. Next question. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, security's, all in the news these days. So this is a good question from Matt. He's asking, what type of security features or controls are available in Nutanix?
That's a great question, yeah, and we'll try to keep it from being too long-winded. So there's a really, a comprehensive security story for Nutanix. So for one, the fact that it's a unified platform, it inherently provides a lower attack surface. It makes it easier to keep everything patched and upgraded, because you don't have to worry about, the different pieces of your infrastructure, like becoming out of date, let's say, right? As zero-day exploits are released, instead of having to go through kind of like the SAN, and the networking, the different servers, the hypervisor, so on and so forth. With a single click, you can patch without any downtime, and so that's, I think, a big part of just the benefit of the architecture. We also have lots of built-in security functionality. Everything from data at rest encryption to built-in key management. So you can either, and this is very flexible, you can either use self-encrypting drives or software-based encryption. Same thing with key management, external or built-in. There's overlay or microsegmentation, I should say. So basically the zero trust security model, right? If an attacker gets into your network, you don't want it to then, run hog wild and get everywhere, right? I mean, ideally you keep attackers out of the network, but you can't guarantee that they won't get in. And so it's important to keep your different networks isolated for that reason. And then let's let's see. For things like DR, for example, we have built-in encryption across clouds. And then there's also built-in security baselines. So for highly regulated industries in particular, thinking of like the federal government, the US and hospitals, there's certain baselines that basically need to be run in order to verify that they meet the criteria. And so we have a lot of those built in from the ground up, and so that you can basically just run a STIG or a run the baseline without needing to run through it in a comprehensive manual fashion, although you can do that as well, of course. And then the last thing, and there's a lot more than just this, but one of the new kind of exciting things that we've put out there is ransomware detection. So, built into the system, there's, I think it's around 4,000 kind of ransomware signatures that we have built in that we can detect, so that if your data is being encrypted in a certain pattern, we can alert you very quickly as to, hey, you might be under attack right now, right? Go shut things down or section off segments of the network, and then recover from the write once, read many snapshots or backups in order to recover from a known good state. So there's more to it than just that, but that's kind of the high level walkthrough of the security portfolio.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that. So many different options and features there, especially that new ransomware detection. That's cool. I haven't learned about that or heard about that before. So next question.
It just came out.
Very nice. Yeah. Next question. They're asking, if you can provide some more details on exactly how Nutanix works with the public cloud. If maybe they're not even using Nutanix today, they want to deploy Nutanix in the public cloud. What are the options and kind of the high level steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really simple. You basically log into a SaaS portal that you specify what AZs you want to deploy in. You put in your Amazon account credentials. Choose the number of nodes and hit deploy, and it'll go deploy it for you. You plug in your Nutanix licenses, and then you can log into Prism, which is our user interface, to then begin deploying VMs and containers. And so, if you don't have Nutanix already, it works just the same way. If you already do have Nutanix, then you can connect with a couple clicks from that same Prism interface, your on-prem infrastructure up to your cluster in the cloud, and and begin replicating VMs, whether it's for disaster recovery or for migration purposes.
Nice. Sounds easy to do. Next question, Bradford's asking, do you find that Opex and Capex arguments are the primary goal when organizations choose Nutanix, with agility as the secondary benefit? Or what do you typically see as the top reasons that companies are moving to Nutanix? Or maybe it's different for every company.
Yeah, I think it's definitely different for every company, and actually, I've seen that it's often different for different people within the same company too, right? You talk to the folks that are managing the infrastructure, and they want to be able to get things done quicker with less unpredictability. Be able to get their nights and weekends back and things of that nature. I think the business agility is one of the key business drivers. The ability to deploy both infrastructure and applications more quickly, enabling self-service is a really big one, right? Because giving users that cloud-like experience without having to actually pay kind of the tax of going to the public cloud is a really powerful tool. But then when you talk to the people that are signing the checks, the finance people, they're very focused on the Opex versus Capex and how that works into their budgets. And so that is then I think a very important factor as well. So if I had to say which was the most important, I think it is probably the business agility piece, because again, I think everybody within a business is focused on how do we increase revenue while minimizing cost, because that's what drives up stock prices and things of that nature. So I think that's probably the main driver for most businesses.
Excellent. Let's see. Next question. Does Nutanix provide assistance with planning and the process of moving from on-prem to hyper-converged infrastructure, or do you work with partners to do that?
Yeah, the answer is yes, both. We do have a lot of a very extensive ecosystem of partners, both resellers, managed service providers, that frequently help customers with this type of, whether it's like you mentioned, setting up their hybrid cloud, or even deploying applications on-prem or just in the public cloud. And then Nutanix ourselves also have an extensive professional services organization that specialize in, all of those things. And also, for example, configuring things like automation and self-service and tuning those for your business, hooking them into ServiceNow and so on for kind of automated, ticket resolution for provisioning and so on. So yeah, the answer is definitely both. Talk to your SE and your sales rep about kind of what you're looking to achieve, and they'll help steer you in the right direction there.
Very nice. Nice. Let's see. William's asking, he said he knows that Nutanix runs on AWS. Does it run on other clouds as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the answer is that today AWS is the only GA cloud that we support, but we actually announced last year at our .next conference support for Microsoft Azure. So that is coming. There's been a few kind of technical hurdles. The way these clouds are built is different. And I mean, that's what I think organizations run into when they try to set up, the kind of multi-cloud. And so, by taking that on as Nutanix, we're now having to abstract that away so that you guys don't have to worry about it. But that has meant that it's taking a little longer than we'd hoped for. But we're hoping to get that out as soon as possible. I'll just say so. Azure is definitely on the roadmap for the next big public cloud that will be supported. And then we do also have a number of smaller managed service providers that offer essentially cloud-like deployment services. As well, and those are tend to be more regional, but we do have a number of those as well.
Very nice. And then this question, you may have heard this before. They're saying most of my current infrastructure runs on VMware. How does that impact my ability to use Nutanix for hybrid cloud?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So in fact, most Nutanix nodes deployed, at least that report into our systems, are still running VMware as the hypervisor, right? AHV, the Nutanix built-in hypervisor, has grown in adoption, massively, and actually the majority of our customers do run some AHV in their environment. But the point is that we're very invested in making it as seamless and as valuable as possible for customers that that love their VMware environment. When it comes to hybrid cloud, it was built in from the ground up to be able to get the cross hypervisor mobility. So, for example, when you migrate a VM from a VMware Nutanix cluster into an AHV cluster, whether it's in the public cloud or not, that migration happens automatically, so that you're able to then basically migrate and spin up the VM without having to go and kind of rebuild things yourself manually. So in the cloud, we do offer AHV as the hypervisor. But the other thing that we've found is, especially when it comes to public clouds, the hypervisor itself becomes a lot less of the primary concern, right? When you run an Amazon, you often don't even see the hypervisor itself. It's about the VMs and the services. And so, we find that organizations, in that scenario tend to be a little bit less concerned about the intricate details of the hypervisor. But suffice to say that, yeah, they integrate seamlessly and makes it really easy to move between.
Excellent. And then here's another good question that came in. They're asking if Nutanix is only ideal for large enterprises, or could it be helpful in small and medium-sized companies too, who might want to implement HCI?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Nutanix was designed so for scalability, and what we mean by that is from the very smallest deployments up to the very largest. And we have, in fact, on the sales side, a large, SMB, a dedicated SMB and commercial team that is focused on, smaller sized customers. Our support model is set up to support them efficiently as well, but without having, the sort of delineation, like when an SMB or a commercial account calls into our support, you still get a dedicated, very experienced SRE right out of the gate. But when it comes to the sort of the cost perspective, which is often, more of a concern for smaller companies, the kind of entry point, we have systems that, you can start at 3 nodes really for kind of a fully protected enterprise cluster. It does scale down to 1 and 2 nodes, but we typically recommend that more for remote office environments. You can tune to pretty small CPUs. You can choose cost-effective storage, and so the entry point for the smaller systems, is quite low, even though it can scale up to really massive individual nodes, and then of course really massive clusters as well. So we're very focused on addressing the entire market.
Awesome. Well, I know we're starting to run out of time here in our webinar slot. Before we go, I do want to ask you, Steve, about the Nutanix test drive. So if folks go to the handouts tab here, they click on the Nutanix test drive, they sign up for this, a really quick, easy form here. I just see one question: what's your work email? You put that in, sign up for it, and then from there, kind of what happens? What could they do with this?
Yeah. So what happens is we put in your work email, and then you'll get an email. I forget the exact time frame, but it's, I think, on the order of a few minutes to less than an hour, that says your cluster is ready, and you basically click a link. It brings you to the Prism interface, and logs you right in. Then you can go in and do everything from, and it actually has a guided walkthrough as well. So it'll have little pop-ups that show you here's where to start for provisioning storage. Here's where to go to create some VMs, create some snapshots, look at the console of your VM, so on and so forth, all the way to walking you through, how to set up file storage systems, and pretty much the full gamut of our offerings. And so the idea is to make it a kind of a guided walkthrough, but that gives you the vast majority of the functionality, basically from your browser, so you don't have to install anything or set anything up on your end. So it's pretty easy. I'd definitely recommend giving it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems like by far the easiest way to do any sort of testing and learning and kind of proof of concept around Nutanix. You can go in here and learn how, as Steve said, to work with different applications, business continuity, database operations, AI ops, automation, and hybrid cloud, like we're talking about today. So I encourage everyone to check that out. All right. And I guess with that, it looks like we have answered pretty much all the questions. And so let's go ahead and wrap it up. Steve, I want to thank you so much for your excellent presentation today. Thanks for joining the event.
Yeah, thank you, David. Really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
And thank you to Nutanix for supporting the event today. Don't forget about the handouts tab. There are lots of different resources. And then, of course, just visit Nutanix.com for more information or talk to your local Nutanix representative. And then before we go, I do want to announce the winner of our Visa $300 gift card. This is going out to Carolyn Schneider from Maryland. Congratulations. Carolyn Schneider from Maryland will also be reaching out to our Best Question Prize winner as well. Thank you to everyone who joined the event today. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.